For steroids.
That's how we're going to start the podcast. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Titan Performance Podcast. It is Trent here with Mike, as always, and Russ today. So I am a weather guy from the Air Force. Fun note, in my yearly report or whatever, performance report, they did call me a weather ninja one time, which would be a lot cooler if Mike was not an actual reconnaissance ninja in the Army. So I am here, as always, to translate from the cool guys to normal people and make it all make sense. Our guest today, Russ Bolinger. Russ, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you here, bro.
Hey, I appreciate you having me, Trent. Thanks for the time, Mike. Good seeing you again, brother.
Yeah, you too, brother.
Just call him Ninja. That's what we call him. I don't know if you. Ninja. When you're at Mike's house, he actually makes you call him Ninja. It's uncomfortable at first, but you get used to it.
Oh my gosh.
Russ, let's start from the beginning. How did you get to where you are? Young Russ, running around wherever you came from. How did you start going in the direction that led you to where you eventually ended up on this podcast today?
Yeah, well, that goes back a ways. I realize I'm in my 40s now. As a kid, I grew up in Michigan. I played all the sports. I lettered in 4 sports through high school. I grew up racing dirt bikes. And I always had a drive to want to serve, not knowing what that meant. Being part of sports athletics, you learn how to be part of a team. You get to see the ones that compete and do well, but in the back of my head, I saw that they would kind of lead by example. And again, I didn't know what that meant until later on in life. But when I was a junior in high school, the Twin Towers got hit, and so I felt like a pull and a calling to go and serve. So I went to the Army recruiter. After my junior year, I signed up for the Army, and I left 2 weeks after I graduated high school. Was assigned to the 101st Airborne Division after basic training. I thought I had a Ranger contract going in, so I had this chip on my shoulder. That chip motivated me later on in life, but did my first deployment in 2003 to northern Iraq with the 101st. Came back from that deployment, and again, I was motivated to go to the Ranger Regiment. That first deployment in Mosul, Iraq, had a lot of exposure to the beginning of the global war on terrorism, the initial invasion of Iraq, and cool guys in hockey helmets, wearing cool guy gear, just having freedom of movement and just doing work that I just felt drawn to do. Honestly, having the initial start of my career being with the conventional military or a light infantry unit, I was an infantry guy my whole career. It was good because I got to see what the foundation was like, but I also got to see what else was out there at the higher caliber level. Like, you have high school athletics, you have varsity and JV, and then you have college athletics, but you have D1, D2, and D3, and then professional athletics, and there's a similar tier level in the military. And so at a young age, I got exposure to that. I went to Ranger School in 2004. I was 19 years old. I was a young, motivated infantry guy. And then that's when I realized that's when the hard work happens. So I was Ranger qualified, not a real Ranger yet. And I was expected to lead, to mentor, to develop, to do everything that was right. And I was a young PFC with a Ranger tab. So I didn't want to do deployment 2 with the 101st. I wasn't able to work a deal to go to the Ranger Regiment, so I went to the Special Forces recruiter, got selected, or got kind of their approval. I did like a backdoor deal because deployment was coming. My unit didn't want to necessarily release a Ranger qualified guy to the next deployment, but I didn't want to do another deployment with the regular Army unit, to be honest. So I went to selection for Special Forces and got selected April, May 2005. I then went to the Q course 506. I was there a year, had 3 months from graduating, and had some growing pains. The Q course is just long, and so I was there 12 months. Had a really good lesson where I failed, and I kind of stepped on my crank a little bit during MOS phase, went back to the regular Army, did a 15-month deployment with 3rd Infantry Division, And it gave me some good time, one, to evaluate the special operations community as a student in that kind of lens. But it was also kind of a lesson of humility where I failed. And if I wanted to work at something, am I going to just stop? Am I going to continue? But also, was that the path I was wanting to go in the special operations community? In my mind, special forces as a teenager, and what you see from the movies, I thought it was like, Rambo, G.I. Joe stuff, direct action, but really that's the Ranger Regiment, and that's the path to other direct action like, Combat Applications Group, CAG, or Delta Force, other Tier 1 units. That wasn't the Special Forces mission. So I eventually became thankful that I didn't continue that path, and going back to the regular Army, that chip in my shoulder just kind of grew. For about a year and a half, I denied a promotion to E5, and my re-enlistment window was open. I re-enlisted to go to the Ranger Regiment. And so I was an import to the Ranger Regiment. I was a tab spec for like 5 years in the Army. I didn't tell anybody I had any deployment experience, years of experience. They knew I had a CIB, but a lot of guys came in, and I just knew nothing I did prior to the Ranger Regiment mattered. None of it mattered. I didn't want to show up as an E5 because the expectation for a Ranger NCO is really high. So to prepare for the Ranger Regiment, I was deployed. I was on a 15-month deployment. I knew in my mind that's what I was doing. So I worked out a lot. I fitnessed a lot. And I kind of learned the difference between working out to look good and then working out to perform. And
Yep.
I'm 5'6". I sit at right now 180, 185. I grew up wrestling. I think wrestling prepared me a lot through life just mentally. But that mental shift of preparation of a performance athlete rather than just aesthetically looking good. Because the requirements in the conventional Army, it was 2 minutes push-ups, 2 minutes sit-ups, and 2 mile run. That's it. And if you pass that to a certain percentage, then you're good to go. However, in the special operations community, you're a military athlete, and not only that, you're a special operations athlete. So within the exposure I had from the Q course and being there a year, I got to see what operators fitness like. I got to see some of the requirements, and if I was to bring value, I certainly didn't want my fitness to hold me back. And so, I trained up for probably a year, doing a lot of unconventional training, but more functional fitness, kind of CrossFit before CrossFit was a thing, to just get ready to go. So I went to the Ranger Regiment. I went to RIP back in 2008. I was the only guy with the Ranger tab, so that was an interesting experience. I kind of got hazed a little bit, and they're going to make sure if you've shown up with the tab that you're not a dirtbag. And so they do their due diligence on every selection. For now, it's RASP 1 and RASP 2, and there's a reintegration or reselection process through promotions to kind of ensure the gates meet the standard. But what I was physically prepared. What I wasn't was grown up in the Ranger Regiment. So going there, I knew there was going to be a lot to digest, to drink from a fire hose, but I had to show up with a good attitude. I had to learn CQB, marksmanship, battle drills, airfield seizures, breaching, and then how the Ranger Regiment executed. So, I spent the next probably 6 years at the Ranger Regiment. Did 5 more deployments. I did 2 deployments with Bravo Company, 3 deployments with Alpha Company. I went to combat dive school while I was in Bravo Company, trained up for combat dive school, and again, why that's an interesting conversation, why CDQC. Me as an import, I had to kind of show that I was, I was willing to be part of the crew or good enough. And so you're able to get almost any school in the military minus free fall school. In the Ranger Regiment, combat dive school is one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult course in the military. So I trained up for it as a team leader. I passed pre-scuba prior to deployment. We went and deployed in 2010. I came back, and 2 weeks after the return of that deployment, I reported down to Key West, did my 6 weeks of dive school, and graduated. Came back with a bubble, and Chris Masters, who's the regimental sergeant major, him and I did some train up in the pool. We linked up. When I got back, he offered me a squad, and that's where I went from Bravo Company and Alpha Company. Ruffled some feathers leaving BCO. That, again, it's an interesting organization at the Ranger Regiment. I left the Ranger Regiment in 2013. I ended up going to RTB, 4th RTB, Ranger Training Battalion Brigade, over at Fort Benning for a year. And then, when you're outside the special operations community around that fence, you're kind of like open. And I had all these qualifications, experience. You get pulled, went on orders, went to the regular Army again, went to the 101st, and I finished out my career there. I ended up medically retiring in 2018. What was unique about going to the 101st, which was the unit I started with, I had a completely different perspective. I never really enjoyed my experience in the regular Army. To me, none of it really mattered unless it was like cool guy special operations experience. And then when I had that experience and I got to take it back and give it to the boys, it was really powerful, just how impactful that could be to the organization, to a team, to individuals, and guys I still plug in with, and I actually coach currently, were former soldiers, and just the impact to guys that can, and if they do, rather than being like a bully, kind of being a jerk, being a positive influence, impactful, and leading, and that servant-style leadership mentality that I got to learn from the Ranger Regiment. We got to learn from guys like Chris Masters and Mike Edwards and other just, giants or titans in organizations, what right looks like, but also what wrong looks like. And I also made a ton of mistakes in my career. I probably made more mistakes than I was successful, but I learned more from the mistakes. And taking those to the 101st was interesting. I went to a Pathfinder company, and when I got there, they were all deployed. And so at the time, I was like the rear D NCOIC, which transitioned into like the brigade master fitness trainer, because I ended up going to Army Master Fitness Trainer course. And so I was in charge of a lot of people that are overweight, out of shape, injured, on top of preparing to go to Ranger School. 159 Aviation ended up being like kind of taken away, disbanded. And so a lot of the infantrymen that were assigned to a Pathfinder company went to the conventional military and kind of out to the masses. At that time, it was unique. There's Best Ranger competition was going on. Best Ranger competition in the train up is really good train up for any selection. Just anybody wanting to go to any selection, and you're in the military, train up for Best Ranger, try out, do Best Ranger, and you will be prepared for physically for any selection. There's a mental aspect in there in training. There's chems games. There's, you're doing an 8-mile road march with your buddy, and you see like a sticker with four numbers on it. If you don't pay attention to it, that could have been like a key code to open up like a safe with some hatchets that you throw. And if you paid attention to that, you just save 10 minutes every positive hit. So a lot of attention detail items with Best Ranger. But getting back on topic, I was released to allowed to go train for Best Ranger, and it was like, wait a minute, I get to go be like responsible for nothing except being an athlete. At the time, I was coaching CrossFit because suddenly I wasn't in the Ranger Regiment. I had plenty of time to go do whatever I wanted. In 2014, I started coaching CrossFit. I went to CrossFit Level 1, CrossFit Level 2, CrossFit Gymnastics, CrossFit Mobility, USAW Weightlifting, like just all the certifications. And again, like realizing some of the experience we had and giving it back to people as well as civilians, let alone just conventional military, it felt empowering and rewarding. rewarding. And so that kind of came, what unknowingly now was the mission, starting with Best Ranger. And through that process of training, I found out I had a back injury. At the time, it was an L1 shift in my L5S1. That transitioned to a grade 2 shift. And so in 2018, I ended up medically retiring. I opted out of back surgery and fusion, along with like neck, shoulder, ankle, knee, traumatic brain injury, ears ring, like a laundry list of injuries over 15 years of service. Where I coached CrossFit for about 5 years. I worked with competition athletes, female strong women athletes, Best Ranger athletes for 2 years. We ended up having the best finish since 1998 as a team. When I came on with like a CrossFit endurance type of mentality of training, some of that from the Ranger Regiment and just being a military athlete. Where it transitioned out of the military, and then what? When I got out, I had no idea what I was going to do. Transitioned to sales, because it's just solving problems, and navigated some of the civilian life, solving some problems while I was still coaching. A lot of it was just for free, helping athletes, helping people train for Ranger School, training for Best Ranger, training for selection. I ended up working with Supercross, motocross athletes, jiu-jitsu guys, and really just like, saying in the military, la-di-da-di everybody. It was staggering what I didn't realize I knew about fitness preparation, mental strength, nutrition, recovery, hydration, awareness of body, and I just started to teach that, preach that to humans. We're human athletes. And so that's really changed over time my concept of fitness, my concept of us as human athletes, and life is the ultimate survival sport. And since being out the last 7 years, I've built and developed a company, Apex Performance Solutions, and I've worked with professional athletes, military athletes. I've talked with people working at the Olympic Training Center to 70-year-olds trying to just get off the toilet. And a lot of lessons learned in the path of fitness, of military, understanding the difference between a performance athlete and just trying to look good with or without your clothes on, the benefits of being healthy, and a whole bunch to unpack behind all of that.
Dude, speaking of endurance, you really just went through it all. You did the whole answer. Like, that was crazy, dude. I know. That's my fault, because I asked you how you got to the podcast, and you're like, well, bro, strap in, because this is how I got here. If we could go back to the beginning, I do want to, dude, you covered, there were some bombs in there. That was incredible. But I want to talk about in the beginning. So you were a wrestler. First of all, I want to know why you joined the Army. And I'm assuming you just like palmed the Air Force recruiter in the face, beat it nerd, as you move towards the Army recruiter.
I'll keep it PG, but I wanted to actually bring the fight to the enemy.
Wow, hurtful and accurate at the same time.
We get a lot of great. I'm not going to talk smack too bad, but it's what I also realized, the team dynamic. Without the Air Force, the Marines, the Navy, the conventional units, without the guy filling the fuel truck, without the cook flipping, eggs or burgers, without the intel analysts giving us real-time information on the ground, we wouldn't be successful. And the higher up you go in any sport, any arena, it's a team. There's multiple coaches, multiple leaders, multiple assets, multiple dimensions to team, including Air Force, and including, your enablers, your assets. Without assets, with just a single vertical unit, you're not really that special. And so, yeah, we need everybody.
I got a question for you, because I kind of know where your focus has shifted. We do a lot of this is to help the younger guys, but also not just that, to help the older guys too. So for the guys like me that are retired from the military, their bodies beat up from a career, what is one of the number one thing, or the most important thing that you would recommend for a guy to be able to stay functionally fit?
So there's a few variables. I wouldn't say it's one thing. The first thing I would focus on is nutrition. That's in theory, that's more important than I would say more important than exercise, because your nutrition is going to support your sleep. Nutrition and sleep, and then your hydration. Those things honestly are more important than high intensity anything. Because if you're working out really hard and your sleep quality is poor, your testosterone is going to drop. If you're getting less than 6 hours of sleep a night, your testosterone is going to drop between 10 to 15%, especially if that's consistent. And if you want just simple basic testosterone increase, get more than 6 hours consistently over weeks and periods of time. So sleep quality, hydration, but not only hydration, purify your water. There's a lot of crap in the water, and so you can get a Berkey system. I would caution reverse osmosis, because that's going to pull nutrients out of the body. And so adding nutrients to your water, looking at adding salts. I'm a big fan of Redmond's Relight salt. I'm not sponsored by them, but it's a salt mineral that also helps hydrate. And there's things I stay away from like the plague. Like, I won't consume them, not because I'm, I have a bias or it's like a faith prejudice, but it's not healthy for me. And so it's kind of a loaded question, but I would honestly look at high quality nutrient dense food. And, again, we can pack that one in there as well.
No, I think that is really important. I didn't think you were going to go that route, but you're right. It's not the working out necessarily, it's the preparation before the working out. And I'll ask one more thing too. Through all the training as you were coming into the Ranger Regiment, in working with the guys in SOF, were you ever surprised at the level of fitness and what it required to be there? And give me your answer on that one.
Oh yeah, and so that's a great answer. It's like, it reminded me, Trent, you mentioned I grew up wrestling up in Michigan, and that's a no joke state where they have some brawlers up there, and that was some of my best mental training. But to get anywhere of an elite caliber physically, of performance, mentally you have to be locked in. It's like you have talent or hard work, and I'd take a hard worker all day long over talent. And to have hard work mentally, you have to be so strong and motivated and driven. And you have to overcome challenges, hurdles, pain, and obstacles. And so it's also like you're navigating the unknown when you go to performance. Like, what are you comparing? You can't just compare yourself around, who's around you. And that's another variable of your environment. Who are you training around? Who are you exposed to? And so the exposure to some of the first soft guys I've seen, I'm like, those guys are superhuman. Like freak athletes of the professional caliber. Like, I'm watching college wrestlers or football players just move. Like, they just moved like they were coordinated, balanced. They had speed, agility, power. And it was all in different shapes and forms as well. It's like, they're not, most of them look like comic book characters, just like these big, jacked superhumans, but they could also knock out 12 miles. They could deadlift, they could sprint, they could jump, they could pull, they could carry their buddy, they could skedco drag, they could push, they could pull. It was, where are the holes? And they didn't have many holes in their fitness.
But can they shoot a basketball? Because one of my favorite things is to do actual athletic things with a lot of these dudes.
So, and that's a good point. Some of them are non-athletic, but you look at it like this. I've worked with a lot of professional athletes, and a lot of pro athletes are not athletic. They're very good at their sport, that one sport.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys that are professional athletes that do not have a lot of range of motion or mobility. They have like that 10,000 hour rule to master the craft. They've spent so much time doing that one thing. And I'm thinking of like basketball players, because you mentioned basketball. They're great at basketball. They can't cross country ski. They can't go through an obstacle course. They can't, and if they do they do it gracefully? They do it well? You look at the best athletes, they're gymnasts. You take a gymnast, throw a barbell in their hand. They look incredible. Have them go run, jump, throw, anything. They'll figure it out and pick it up. And again, that talent and that coordination and that balance, that has to be worked. And you can develop that. Some have it. However, the variable of importance of coordination, speed, and balance, and training not just in the gym but sport and cross training, having a variety of things you're exposed to, not just a one sport athlete or a two sport athlete, so you can gain skills and tools. And with my own kids, I look at what am I exposing them to. Gymnastics is the first thing for body awareness, and I see a lot of where we'll have like sport day within different military units in the special operations community, having just fun, and you will see some of these guys that are studs like not be able to throw or catch or really do. But when you look at their job, again, the 10,000 hour rule of what really matters, and plus basketball, you're going to roll an ankle or two, and that's never fun.
Yeah, well, but I think there is something to that, right? Like the three-dimensional athlete is the way I look at it. Because I know we've all seen people show up to the selection courses that are really good running in straight lines. They're really good at pull-ups, push-ups. They might even be good in the water. But as soon as you put them under load, expect them to do dynamic movements in 3 dimensions back and forth, that's when their body really starts to break down. And so like I think that's when we call them athletes and all that other stuff. People will be like, oh, well, you can run 3 miles in under so many minutes or whatever it is. But it's like when you go to these selection courses, when you're doing the job, if you haven't trained in like the multi-dimensional way, which sports does a lot of that for you. Like I credit growing up playing soccer for my legs not breaking during the training, right? Like when you're running with a ruck on or you're moving and you're reacting to contact, how did my how did my ankle not snap in half? It's like, oh, because I played soccer for most of my life, right? And so I think it's hard for some people to see the requirements, right, on paper, the PT requirements, and not understand the actual requirements for a selection course or your career.
Yeah, and I think that goes into one, like parents kind of looking at are they living through their kids, or are they trying to prepare their kids? And I think
Right.
the role of a parent is to prepare your kids, but also when you're taking it upon yourself on what am I doing outside of training? What am I doing outside of work, hobbies, time that's going to help prepare? Yeah, I grew up playing soccer as well from like U7 up until I was in high school, and all the miles of playing outside mid, just running nonstop. That helped me. So did wrestling and track, and I ended up playing football my senior year. But yeah, to your point, you're not going to just prepare over a season, over a year. It takes years of preparation to really have this safety net of the connective tissue, the joints, the tendons, the ligaments, not just the big helper muscles that get the credit, but your core stability, your back stability. Also learning how to recover, the importance of recovery, mobility, range of motion, what you're doing after the workout, how you're rolling out, mashing, how you're stretching while your body's warm to increase range of motion, and then what you're doing for a proper warm-up before activity, before sport, before training. And most of my injuries came from lack of warm-up, from lack of mobility. And as I know now, like why I have back issues, it's my iliacus muscle inside the hips that create tension and want to just pull. And you maintain tension, things are going to just pull. And when you can loosen things up, it's going to help recovery. It's going to help blood circulation and flow to facilitate recovery. But a lot of times we don't want to do, the nerd work, whatever you want to call it, of doing little warm-ups, getting accessory work and, working internal, external rotation, which is going to prep and kind of prime your body to do the high-intensity stuff safely.
I think that's just the what you think special operations is going to be. It's the same mindset, right? What you think special operations is versus what it actually is when you get there. You're like, oh, it's just running and gunning and lifting weights, and it's like the longer you stay in it, it gets super nerdy about taking care of the body and all this other the highest performing guys, right? And early on in your career, like you'll make fun of those dudes, and then like 6 years later, you're like, hey man, like can you help me stretch out over here? Like what are you actually doing? Like I know I made fun of you for like 5 years straight. Please help me out because my back feels like it's about to shatter.
Well, and that's a great point, and some of the things I learned from some of the best I worked with and other squad leaders I worked with are things to stay away from. Like, I didn't know soy milk was bad. I was like, oh, great, maybe it's like a healthy thing. Well, that maybe is helping my estrogen production, which isn't really good when it's coming on to like testosterone production. When you're looking at hormones and looking at chemicals being produced in the body and the brain, and the gut mind connection with nerves, the gut health, and the quality of the gut lining and bacteria in the gut with the food you're eating, and the stress in the brain and the gut. When you're in a stressful job non-stop, the body's stressed, the mind's stressed, the nervous system's stressed. Everything's in this mode that's not going to help facilitate sleep, recovery, and a lot of other items that are going to help you heal, let alone perform at an optimum level. And some of that you get used to over time, but the nutrition piece is so important for recovery. And again, it's like this, it's almost like an ever-changing algorithm. The meals you eat that I learned, the meal first thing when you wake up looks different than the meal before you work out or after your workout or before you go to bed. And looking at the nutrient density is different than the macronutrients. And a lot of this I learned over time, not just cool guy stretches and like tools to use to mash and like make my body feel better. But if you don't have enough protein and your body's not recovering and you're not able to perform and your sleep quality's poor, your mood's going to be piss poor. And then your quality of doing any type of training is going to be piss poor. And how that impacts others in an organization with a tight-knit organization is you have a responsibility, if you want to be on a team, to take care of yourself. And if you're not taking care of yourself, that's impacting the team and the environment around you. And how you can best impact a team is take care of yourself, be a good steward of self. That's setting a good example, which is also elevating the environment of what you're being around. And so that's what I also learned was being a good ranger buddy, was taking care of yourself. And, there's a lot of enforcement of standards. And as you learn to grow and develop and elevate yourself, that elevates the team around you. And so it was just interesting lessons through that career, and then just that shift of mentality in how I kind of took that, really after the Ranger Regiment.
Yeah, that's a good point. You were talking about how you've got to be a good team member before you can be a good asset to the team, and physical fitness applies to that too. And I liked how you were talking about how your mind has to be in the game, because all the missions we're training during the day and then preparing, and then we could get the call at a moment's notice. You could have been just crushing your body in the gym, and then your pager goes off, and now you're planning a mission, and 30 minutes you're out the door, 45 minutes you're out the door. What were some of the things that you used throughout your career to flip that switch, to keep that focus at the premium level? I know the nutrition is key, staying physically fit is key, but is there anything mentally just trigger, like thought-wise or process-wise, that you used?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is there's belief. Like there's gonna be times you're gonna be sore, you're gonna be tired, but it's mindfulness of your environment and distractions, what you're staying away from. If you allow in stress, and it's something I didn't really understand till later in life, but if you're going to be a good gunfighter or a warrior, nothing else can take priority over that. So with saying that, a lot of things are going to get sacrificed. Like I went through divorce. I went through and did a lot of mistakes because I prioritized what I was doing. And at the time, to others, and again, not allowing the noise of others to impact your mind and your frame of mind, you really have to focus on what you're doing at a level so severe based on what we're doing with work, with life limit or hindsight. And so there's visualization, there's mental prep, there's rehearsals, there's also confidence within the team. They're kind of built-in unknowing things that you're doing. Over time and years of training, you have belief and trust, not only in yourself, your abilities, but the team. And rehearsals. We do a lot of rehearsals. As we're developing the mission, you're getting more information of what's going on the ground to give you confidence when you get on the ground. You've seen this before. We get GRGs, a graphical representation of the ground, of a macro and a micro view. So you know what size ladders to get. You know where the gates are, where the doors are. pattern of life, traffic is at. You can rehearse some of that with your team so it's a little bit more familiar. And so like visualization techniques, rehearsal techniques, I'd have to go up and brief. So I'd have to practice briefing before I gave a brief because I didn't want to be stepping on my words. If these guys are going to trust me to make decisions, or I'm putting up an explosive breach, or I'm placing a sniper on a wall, or as a weapon squad leader I'm checking on blocking positions, I need to know where they're at, and they need to have trust in me. And so there's not and it's not even a fake it till you make it, but you have to have confidence, because if you don't have confidence, they're going to smell that, they're going to see that. And when the crap hits the fan, like you need to have faith and confidence. And so the training cycle building up to deployments, like that's kind of by design, starting from the individual level, the team level, squad level, the section, company, and then through at the battalion and airfield seizures. It was like a culmination up to deployment that there was so much build up, train up for months to go on that deployment that there was a lot of work up to it that got us ready to go with our op tempo during training that transferred over to deployment. And so like the mental switch, it wasn't so like unfamiliar, but we had so many reps in the op tempo of deploying. It became a common language that we could get the new guys up to speed so that we could trust them on target. And that would develop over time.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I forget a lot of stuff that we did and how we did and the mechanisms we used, but that's a good point that you bring out. And there is tons of rehearsals with everything. Especially in the Ranger Regiment, it's rehearsal on everything. And I think that's what builds in why we're professional and people look at it as professional. It's the same with Delta Force. That's one difference with that unit and the Ranger Regiment versus some other units is they literally leave nothing to chance. They rehearse everything, investigate everything, plan and prepare for everything, plan for every single contingency, and still things are going to happen outside of what you planned for. So, but you're right, but you're flexible and able to continue moving because you're, like you said, you trust in the system and you trust in the guys. So, yeah, good answer there. I'll back over to Trent.
Yeah, no, I loved that. I loved everything about the mindset and the build up and all that other stuff. But I do want to go back to something that you said earlier because we're a little more than halfway. And this is something that I take from my career. My career started off with this failure, right? Like I joined as one thing and then I got into the Air Force and they're like, well, you can't get a top secret clearance because you burned your life down and you're a moron. So you have to go do something else before you can move on. But I credit that point as the tipping point for success, for all my later success, right? That humility that came with me thinking that I was going to do something that I really wanted to do, and it didn't work out, and I ended up doing something else that actually worked out a lot better. So when you went to the Q course and you were there for a very long time, and you got in your own way a little bit, and you had to leave, what were those lessons, and how did you deal with that? And what were those lessons that you learned that were critical when you became a Ranger?
Yeah, honestly, when I left, so I was 21, and so for me, I was, I left when I was 18 years old and immediately deployed. So in the Q course, it's big boy rules, and I was 20 when I started. I was young, and I should have had a little bit more focus and tension and taken it more serious. That at the time. I didn't realize I did that. I was kind of in the blaming of others, and then I realized I need to take responsibility for my actions. When I left, I had a big chip on my shoulder. Honestly, when I went to that next unit, I was angry. I was just angry, and what I didn't realize, I was just angry at myself, and it motivated me not to stop. I wasn't just going to stop. I was still hungry. I was just pissed that I allowed that to happen. I was so complacent and I'm good. I already did all the hard stuff. I had Robin Sage and the rest of language, and I was done. The hard stuff was done. And so that was the first thing I really failed in the military. It was humbling, and it was later I realized that was good for me. Like, it's not about what you do when you're successful, but what happens when you fall. Like, now your character's tested. Pick yourself up by the bootstraps. Now it's time to go to work. And so I was thankful that I didn't continue my career in the in the special forces community. No knock against them. I realized that wasn't the mission. I was wanting to
Maybe
get
maybe
up.
just seventh group, like maybe a knock against seventh group. Those guys are wild. It's fine.
Yeah,
You can say
and
it.
it's funny. Yeah, each group has a little bit of their own flair of what they're known for,
Yeah.
and it's a great mission. It's honestly, it's awesome environment, and I learned a lot about those guys going through dive school. But I wanted more of that direct action mission, and so I was again motivated, and that was the initial plan. Like, my uncle jumped into Panama with BCO 375 and got out right before the Somalia invasion or mission, and so he had a lot of regret. He was RFS'd for a drinking incident. The Ranger Regiment is really like stern and has always been about standards. You mess up once, like, you're out of there. And so we watched Black Hawk Down in the theaters, and I remember like watching him. I was like, wow, that's heavy. But I also remember those cool guys in the hockey helmets. And so, again, kind of reset with the path of like, I'm not going to let failure or hurdles just stop me. It may delay the process. And through that, I later learned how much character that built. Unknowingly, that's what I was building and doing in the process. I'd say I didn't necessarily carry myself the best, and I learned from that as well. You learn a lot more from your failures than your success, and so the impact I could have had on others in more of a positive way rather than just being a dick. And it's there's a lot of incidents. There's some funny stories that I have, and I didn't make too many friends. I'll just say that.
Yeah. You were young. It's fine. You were young. It's funny, but yeah, it's funny now. But I think a first thing is I think there comes a point in your life, or at least for me, when I just had to decide that I was going to be a positive, happy person, for not only my benefit but for the benefit of everybody around me.
Yep.
And I do have a follow up question for both of you. It occurs to me that both of y'all were in the regular army first. Both of y'all thought about becoming a Green Beret. Both of y'all ended up in the Ranger Regiment, and then both of y'all ended up in like instructor and all these other experiences later on in your career. Can y'all kind of like walk me through, and especially let's focusing on like the Ranger Regiment, when you go back into the regular army, and you touched on it a little bit, Russ, like how weird is that? And then you've seen like what the tip of the spear looks like, and then I'm assuming you have like this appreciation for all this other stuff, but like how did that entire experience affect the way that you became like a coach, mentor, and instructor at the end of your careers?
Yeah. You want me to kick it off, Mike?
Yeah, go ahead, and I'll hop in after you.
Well, honestly, like, I wasn't pumped about going back to the 101st. I I had plans to go to Delta Selection, and that was the plan of doing Best Ranger. I had my fill. I did everything I wanted to in the Ranger Regiment, and then some. In my military career, I did more than I ever thought I would, and I'm so thankful for everybody I've worked with. In saying that, I kind of realized once I went back to a Pathfinder company, like what platform, what power, what impact I had at the organization, and it was humbling. It was like, wow, this isn't about me. Like, I have an opportunity to do for others. Like, this isn't about me. Like, anything I've done, it isn't about me. What I can do to benefit others, the organization, the team, and individual. And what was an interesting like caveat shift to that, I started going to a CrossFit gym in Tennessee in 2014, and I just saw some people doing back squats wrong. I went over like, hey, oh, stop that. Like, hey, do your bar like this, foot position, head position, neutral spine, midline stability. There you go. There you go. Looks awesome. Coach came to me after like, hey, Russ, I want to talk to you. I'm like, oh, crap, man. Hey, I didn't mean to step on toes. Like, no, hey, thank you. Like, we love having guys like you in the gym. If we paid for your level 1, would you be willing to coach? I'm like, absolutely. And what came from all of that, I mean, a leadership position in uniform is one thing. out of uniform and taking this experience from our service for others, not self, a value to benefit someone else. It was like, well, that's why we went and did what we did. Like, I now get to see the power we have to help and serve and do for others, and to be a role model, to continue to be a leader, and to share that information, share that experience and knowledge. And that shift has been like what unknowingly, like over 10 years ago of coaching, I got to serve a different mission and really just help God's people by teaching lessons learned, bringing value, where are they at in their life, their past, their mission, and take any and all this experience and help with the genuine intent of where are you at, what are you trying to do, what problems you have, let me help you. Let's figure out what the hurdles are. And when I got to see, go to the regular army, but also CrossFit gyms, and seeing like these stay-at-home moms of soldiers that are deployed, that are in the CrossFit gym, and they're like wanting to fitness, and I'm getting to see the whole other side of the spectrum, because like I'm injured, I had to either reclass, get surgery, or retire, and this is what I'm doing. So I had a really interesting awakening of what else is out there, and also what people don't know, like what they have. It is a foreign absolute concept. And so I inside feel like there's an obligation to share. Like, what a shame it would be not to pass this knowledge, information, experience to people that didn't have that. They either didn't have the mental capacity to push themselves to prepare for a selection to be part of this group, but I'm not part of that anymore. I'm not doing like, so how can I help and bring honor, credibility, value to the brothers I've worked with that are up above, the organizations that I had the honor to be in and part of, is to pass some of those lessons learned. And now that's became my new mission. And it really started from getting back into the conventional military, coaching at a CrossFit gym, and working with normal humans just wanting to be better. And it's like, as veterans, regardless of the branch of the job, we have all experienced some form or have seen servant-style leadership. And so it's like, what a shame it is when we see these veterans with struggles when really they know what right looks like. And some of them just need a cuff upside the head. But what a powerful opportunity it could be when you have some guys that can bring value, can help and actually do and lead, mentor, and develop in or out of the gym. And so it's almost a responsibility for the ones that can, like, shame on them for not. And so I'm trying to carry the torch.
Yeah, for me, it was very similar. I know Russ was at a time, he was behind me in the career progression. So Russ may have had to leave because of Abrams Charter. So the Ranger Regiment has this thing called Abrams Charter, where that's the Ranger Regiment, one of its biggest missions that I'd say the Army as a whole recognizes is that the Ranger Regiment creates top tier leaders, right? And then those dudes are supposed to leave. It typically happens with the officers. The officers leave, they go to the big Army, make the big Army units better. And then sometimes they come back. But about Russ's time frame of being probably an E67 time frame, they started really pushing that to the enlisted guys and making guys leave. So I don't know if that's kind of what happened there. And it's kind of same for me. Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
I got in trouble. They enforced standards. I made a mistake. I can't blame anybody.
I forgot about that.
But again, that was one of the great lessons learned in my career as well.
Yeah, I forgot about that, but that is one of the things that the regiment does, and I think it's a good thing, and it does spread that knowledge to other people, because when you're in a unit like that, in the Ranger Regiment, like I said, I started off to go Special Forces like Russ. It didn't happen. It was divine intervention, because here we are still working together to this day, and neither one of us probably would have liked it after we got there. So because we wanted to do the DA, we wanted to do the cool guy stuff, the stuff you see in the movies. Everybody thinks Green Berets and Navy SEALs do that stuff, but Rangers do that stuff probably more than anybody. So I ended up going there, but you can become self-centered while you're in the Ranger Regiment because it's all about focusing on your fitness, on your nutrition, on your shooting skills, on your everything, your knowledge, because you are trying to outdo the dude next to you because it's always a competition. And like Russ was saying, now they have RASP level 2, which is if you're an NCO, you could be an E7, E8, it doesn't matter. It's done a whole career in the Ranger Regiment. When it's time for you to move to the next position, you have to reassess against all your peers. So you have to outdo them again in your old age to stay within that unit. So it's really hard to stay there for a career. So for me, it was kind of different. I went to the reconnaissance company, which is the regiment's special missions unit, and I didn't want to leave there. I was forced to leave there to go back to the Line Ranger Battalion because they were short on platoon sergeants. And so I didn't want to do that, man. I really was loving what I was doing there in RRC. But when I got to the line, back to the line unit, they actually put me as the platoon sergeant of the mortar platoon. And those guys, man, like Russ was saying, the respect that they have for you. Like in RRC, I was a run-of-the-mill dude. You know what I mean? Like I was in the middle of the road. I mean, that's the way I looked at myself. Who cares what Mike Edwards says? Everybody's just as bad or badder than you are here. But when I went back to the Line Ranger Battalion, those dudes really looked up to me coming from over there at RRC. So it was a whole nother thing. These dudes just, like Russ was saying, they soaked it in because they're like, I want this knowledge that you have. And I didn't realize I had knowledge, but I could tell that they wanted it. Even the officers and stuff like that, I was surprised at how much power and authority a master sergeant had amongst even the officers in the Ranger Regiment. And so I did that for a period of time and then was going to go back to RRC, but ended up going out to the free fall school to Special Forces World. So I actually worked for Special Forces my last few years before I retired. And it really confirmed that like I would not have liked it there probably. I didn't realize. And it's not that there's a lot of good dudes there, but it's a much bigger unit and it has less funding than the Ranger Regiment. So that little bit of funding is spread a lot further. And I didn't realize that. So, I was borrowing stuff from the Ranger Regiment to facilitate the operations of the free fall school. And it showed me just how good we had it, man. I did not realize how good the Ranger Regiment is so secretive, man. Everybody kind of knows that now. But you don't realize when you're there because you think you're this black sheep of JSOC kind of thing, which Rangers kind of are. But the funding is still, exponentially more than these other like white soft units. So I realized how blessed we were to have it there. And then you're right, same thing. Even at the free fall school, I was able to mentor a lot of guys because there were guys even out in Special Forces world that looked up to me coming from the Ranger Regiment. I didn't realize that, but they do. So that's kind of my experience. It's similar to Russ's. And I started shifting from the selfishness to the more of the servant mentality because that's really what we should be. But it's hard in some of those elite units. So then serving those guys and feeding back into them, which contributes to what we're doing now. So, and that's what I have for it.
Yeah, I think something happens where you're in these communities, these small little kind of cut off communities, and then like you live many lifetimes there, and everything is normal, right? And then it's like one day you don't even realize it till you go to like a Planet Fitness or whatever the equivalent of that is wherever you're going, right? And then you're like, holy crap! And that's what I always want to bring up, like go to Planet Fitness, and I'm like, I'm actually kind of strong, I guess, for like Gen Pop, but where I came from, like I'm like, not that guy, but. I think it applies to the soft community. I think it applies to veterans writ large. I think it applies to any man because we're mostly talking to dudes here that has accomplished anything. Like I have a lot of civilian friends that I look up to in a lot of ways because they've accomplished something. But I think without that pressure, and I don't know if that's like a military thing to have that pressure to feel like you need to give back, but like where does that pressure come from? I mean. Another thing about being like in some of these communities is you get to see a pretty big picture further on in your career, right? Like in the beginning, you're a little narcissist and you're like, I'm the man with the gun. So like, it's all, I am it. And then like, you make rank and you start looking around and you're like, dang, there's like a whole, like for lack of a better term, army of people doing work so that I can do what I do. And maybe it's that perspective that makes us a little bit better about recognizing where people are at and then right sizing the coaching and mentoring to where they are.
Well, I think there's a few things to unpack because a lot of like the foundation's built before you even go into the military. And so, like, you talk about sports before service, you talk about a lot of the life, the hobbies, the outlook, the mentality. If you're an 80% performer, then you'll always be an 80% performer. And so, as you get into a bigger pond, you're going to step up your 80%, but a lot of that is built by what are the parents doing? What are the examples? What's the environment that you grew up in? What is the mentality? Like, what is the mental toughness, and how has there been any investment? And what I've seen a big shift just over the years from early 2000s till present, 20, 25 years of life that's passed from being in high school, people getting outside in the elements, us, getting off some of these devices, away from the comforts. If it's always comfortable, we complain about cell phone service. We talk, oh, the air conditioning's not working, or oh, I'm uncomfortable. If you're not comfortable being uncomfortable, then when it's uncomfortable, you're not going to perform well. And so, like, I still ride dirt bikes, and it's on when it's hot outside. So I try to acclimate the body and not use air conditioning, so when I'm riding, it's not as much of a shift. And having little tools of lack of comfort or some of the mental prep to allow yourself to operate at the higher level out of your comfort zone. If you never get out of that comfort zone, you're going to be mediocre at best unless you kind of fall into line of where you're going to accept yourself to be in the big picture of things. I think that's why environment is so important, and that being a variable in your algorithm of mindfulness. One, who you may need to push away from you in order to be successful. Two, who you may need to pull in, like a mentor, a coach, someone that did it, someone that's better than you. If you're better than everybody around you, how are you going to get better? And if you're working with people that are going to outperform you, you're going to step your game up. And talking kind of like, with Mike, what I would see with guys like Mike, they're hobbies. So outside of what we did, going inside the brown fence or going to work, what hobbies? Are they shooting hobbies? Are they triathlon hobbies? I know Mike, he did some triathlons and did work that helped his physical preparation and readiness. And like, I was having a conversation earlier with a Ranger buddy about preparation and survival. And so many people prep with all these items. But the best thing you can do for your preparation is your physical preparation. Like
Those
if
people
you
are called
can't,
they're called loot drops. Yeah,
right?
They're, they're called what?
loot drops. Because
Never even heard of that.
Well, because you can just go hit their house because they have all the stuff, but they don't have any of the training. They're not physically
Oh
fit.
yeah,
They're 350 pounds. They're like, I got 8,000 rounds of every
yeah.
type of ammo
And it's
that
like, what
exists, and it's
happens
like,
when your significant other gets shot and you can't drag them behind cover, or you can't
Yeah, dude,
bring
you're
them
so right.
and
You're
so
so right about that. The physical fitness is the biggest piece that a lot of these people lack. Because I train a lot of these people. There's some people that I train on the side, and the biggest thing that they do is they're broke off. I mean, I'm talking 25-year-old dudes that this nearly 50-year-old man's breaking off. And I'm like, I'm not even in that great of shape anymore. Like, I'm trying to be, but my body's old. But you're right, they lack the physical fitness, and they don't realize how important that is until I make them do stressful things and then shoot their gun afterwards. And they're like, man, I can't even hit the paper. I'm like, yeah, see how important fitness is? The more fit you are, the quicker you can recover and take those shots.
well, and talking with stress shoots, and when I take guys out to the range, and I'll see like they're slamming coffee, they're drinking energy drinks, and that's one thing. Like I've not bought an energy drink in a couple years, and I used to drink them like religiously. There's a synthetic B12 cyanocobalamin that is horrible for you. It's a synthetic B12 that creates some inflammation that makes you feel injured. Zero energy drinks. There's a lot you can do with
Come on,
supplementation with
Russ.
food. Hey, brother, sorry, man.
Jeez, man.
But you also save money. I know they got like buy
That's
two
like
get one deals.
70% of my personality is White Monster. I don't like. Come on,
White Claws, is that
White
what you?
Monster. No,
Oh, I
the
got you.
energy drink, not White Claws. Jeez,
I
that's
used to
so weird.
crush those things too, but I have cut way back. I still have an occasional energy drink, but I don't do them regularly like I used to.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at if you want to you can eat a banana, like get a squirt of honey and get some electrolytes with water, and then just I mean, get effing motivated. Like, you don't need all this, like, oh, I need these things. Like, get your effing mind right and get motivated and just go. And just get a warm up. The biggest thing I see when guys don't feel like it, if there's a lot of the other variables not dialed in, they're not going to do it. And so, doing a piss poor workout is better than no workout. And again, kind of the backwards planning of like what are some of the key variables needed. If guys just lean into nutrition and they're ensuring there's some like meat on the plate, protein on the plate on each meal, they're ensuring they're getting enough sleep, enough water, nutrients. If your body's majority water, and so if you're not getting salt I salt every meal, and I use real salt. I don't use iodine salt. That's not real salt. But get salt. It's going to retain the nutrients. The nutrients in our food. It is so lacking of nutrients. It is not nutrient dense like the food of the past. But also, like I consume raw milk. I get locally sourced beef that is grass fed and grass finished. I get organic, free range eggs, not like cage free. Like there's a lot of little code words. I try to eat everything I can organic. I don't care it's more expensive. I'm gonna live longer. And my organ health, like organ health is super important. But there's a lot of little things guys just don't realize add up and stack up that impacts their health, their fitness, their mental health. If your body isn't physically active, your brain isn't healthy. Your mind and your brain, the mental health of any human, unless they're active, it's going to be mediocre at best.
You're so right, man, about the food. It's the same with us. We raise our own eggs, through our chickens. We have our own honey because we have our own bees and stuff like that. And we do the raw milk as well. That is definitely key. It's another thing that you said is guys just need to get after it. And I think that's a good way to kind of end this thing. And I'll pass it back to you, Trent, but guys need to get after it. There are days like today, I went to the gym and I didn't feel like working out, man. I didn't feel like it, but I just did it. And it wasn't the greatest workout, but you're right. Some days you just got to trudge through it, because if you stop today, then you're going to have the liability to want to stop tomorrow, and then another day. And then next thing you know, you haven't worked out in 2 weeks. And now it's a mental hurdle just to get yourself back into the gym. So just do it every single day. And I'll pass back to you, Trent.
No, it's good. That consistency is key. But I did want to tell a story. When I was overseas and I was doing 160th support, we're all on the same compound with the Rangers and everything else like that. That's where we would go. We'd go to the Ranger supply closet, and they would give us a case of those Wild Tiger energy drinks, like the Middle Eastern ones that make you feel all funny. So I blame the Rangers for like 60% of my energy drink addiction that I'm cultivating. Right. But dude, Russ, I think we're going to have you back on. You have a wild story and some crazy stuff and amazing advice to give to the folks out there. When we talk about Titan Performance, we're talking about, physical, mental, emotional, how to be a good young man all the way up into a wise man. There's the phases of life that we go through.
And to Mike's point, like getting after it, you have to have this mental self-talk. It starts when you wake up in the morning, first thing. Your morning routine, your evening routine, and mentally, like that's the life insurance policy for your family. As a man, as a dad, like I'm setting the example for my family. And if that's not motivation enough, you need to have a character check of what you're doing to, protect, defend your family, but also get after it so you are confident you're doing what's needed as a man and as a human athlete.
I feel like I got to stop drinking energy drinks now, Russ. Thanks a lot.
Do it, bro.
But hey, before we go, where can people find you, and what's the name of your company?
Yeah, name of the company is Apex Performance Solutions. We're human apex athletes, apex predators. And then russ.bohlinger on Instagram, Russ Bolinger on Facebook. I'm even on LinkedIn. You can find me on there. And hit me up, ask questions, working with people. Happy to do it and continue to serve.
Well, Russ, you are the first guest on the Titan Performance podcast, and I don't think we could have come up with a better one. Everybody, make sure you head over to titanperformance.com. Check out everything that we have to offer. We will tag Russ and all of his stuff in the description. So if you're looking for a link, make sure you go over there and check him out. Give him a follow. Ask him a bunch of questions. Stop drinking energy drinks, and we'll catch y'all next week. Later.
Thanks, gentlemen.